Hello everybody, I'm here today for yet another interview, and today I am, I don't know exactly how to pronounce your name.
Kam VedBrat.
VedBrat?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure how to, was it Kam or Kam or, it confused me, and I didn't know how to say it to the person
right.
at the reception desk. But I'm here, I found it. So.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to talk about a few things today. Kam was involved in a lot of stuff, like quite a few different projects. You were a PM for...
So I've been at Microsoft a little over 7-8 years now, so 98, so what year is it now?
It's 2006.
So 8 years now, almost, and a little over 8 years. I worked on Internet Explorer for a little while. When I first started, I worked in MSN for a while, but more recently I've been working on Windows Vista, and in the last about 8 weeks, I moved over to the Expression team to work on a new product called Expression Web.
Cool. Now, just to satisfy my own curiosity, and probably their curiosity as well, what did you do on the IE team?
So working on IE was my very first job at Microsoft. I was the program manager for the Active Setup Wizard in IE5.
Your first job was a PM position?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, right out of school. So.
Wow.
Yeah, we actually hire a good number of program managers right off campus.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're in college and you want to be a program manager, it's possible.
Sweet. So you said it was for the...
Oh, so I was the program manager for a thing called the Active Setup Wizard, which was the installer for IE5. So at the time, you should sort of go through the Wayback Machine, and one of the big problems we had with IE was it was this really big, 25 meg package that you had to install, and people didn't have cable modems at the time. It was everybody had 14.4, 28.8.
Like 4 people had
56K was like a high-end modem then.
Yeah.
And so, you had to go download this thing, and one of the things that really frustrated people was that the installer was this one giant package, and if somebody call waiting happened, somebody picked up the phone, you get cut off, and then you have to start again, and it was this multi-hour process, not a lot of fun. So the Active Setup Wizard was this thing that was created for IE5, and the project actually started before I even got there. I only worked on it for the last 6 or 7 months before it shipped. But what it did was it essentially took each of the individual cab files that made up IE, and there were, I don't remember how many now, a couple dozen of these, and it would download each of them separately, one by one. And so it would basically break up the download into a bunch of pieces. And you could basically say, oh, you know what, I want IE, but I want IE5, but I'm happy with Outlook Express 4. Actually, I think it was called Internet Mail in use then. But you could mix and match, basically just pick the features. Maybe I don't want the Java VM, or maybe I don't want the Windows Media Player ActiveX Control, or different things that you felt like you wanted, you didn't want. You could check the check boxes and say, I want these pieces. And we had 3 sizes for your download, small, medium, and large. And you could basically pick. And so the wizard basically was the installer, but it did a bunch of things in terms of letting you decide what pieces of IE you wanted, and also then it would only download those pieces that you needed, which was really important when you could get cut off at any moment.
What's really interesting is that, now in the day of DSL and cable modems, the ubiquity of high-speed internet, that's kind of like how most installers work. Back in the day, it was always that big lump package, that took forever.
In that sense, IE5 was kind of innovative, because it was innovative in many senses, but that was one sense in which it was pretty innovative, in that it was one of the only products that did that. So, at the time.
Cool. All right, and so then we fast forward a few years, almost a decade, and you were a PM on the Aero team?
So yes, I was the first program manager for Aero when we first started the project in 2002, and I worked on a thing called the Windows Style Project, where we spent a lot of time looking at kind of the different kinds of UI directions we could pursue, and I did some videos with Robert a few years back, kind of going through some of those. And so I spent a bunch of time on that, and then in 2004 I moved teams from the Windows User Experience team to the Windows Client Platform team, which is the team that makes Windows Presentation Foundation. And another thing that we built on that team was a component of Windows Vista called the Desktop Window Manager. And the Desktop Window Manager is the component that draws the glass window borders around the screen. It does the composited desktop, it does things like Flip 3D, and it enables you to see live previews of Windows in Alt-Tab and in your apps and situations like that. So I was a program manager for that until a couple months ago, and when Windows Vista finally was looking like it was out the door. It was time to do something new, and I looked around a little bit, and now I'm working on Expression Web.
Nice. Now, given that you had this, job that was so, intimately close to Arrow and everything, I think that to this day, a lot of people still don't really understand what Arrow is. Like, a lot of people in their minds, they equate Arrow to WPF, like, there's a one-to-one correspondence where they think that Arrow means, just this one thing or just this other. I mean, what is Arrow?
Lord knows we've been through our fair share of codename confusion with this thing. So, Arrow is the name we have for the new look and feel of Windows.
Okay.
And so Arrow consists of a lot of different things. It's separate from Avalon, it's separate from WPF, but it does use some of the functionality that's at the core of WPF as well. And so, so when you think of Arrow, you think of the overall look and feel of Windows Vista on the premium SKUs, on Pro and on Home Premium and on Ultimate. That's Arrow. And so that includes things like the glass borders, but it also includes things like the color scheme, the desktop, the choices we made around what the start menu should look like, the notion of using large live icons. All of these things that sort of contribute to the overall feel of the operating system are things that we kind of thought of as Arrow. In terms of the names of the color schemes that we have, Windows Vista Arrow is the name of the color scheme that you get in Windows when you have all of the features turned on, including the composited desktop, including things like Flip 3D, and then we have other names for some of the other schemes that only have part of these elements.
Composited desktop?
So the composited desktop is a new way of rendering the desktop onto the screen. The way that previous versions of Windows worked, each window would get its own, essentially we get a handle to some graphics memory, we get a DC, and the operating system would handle marshalling that portion of memory to the screen, and usually it was a section of the screen itself. And so apps would kind of draw to the front buffer on their own. And there were a bunch of issues that came with this. One of them is that if an app became unresponsive, it was very hard to make that application look good if you moved something over it, right? Because he's not repainting anymore, so you get a big white blotch, a big empty space. That's not good. And so that was a problem. Another problem that we had was you'd get a lot of tearing when applications would move or would repaint out of sync with the refresh rate of the display. So there were some issues here. And then, so we have this notion of compositing, which is basically saying every window draws to its own buffer off screen, and then the operating system does the work, and it draws it in its entirety, so it doesn't just draw the unincluded part. We always have a full picture of a whole window.
So it's kind of like double buffering in games?
Kind of like that, yeah. Okay. And so then what we do is we basically have a process that runs on in the operating system called the compositor that takes each of those buffers for each of those windows and composes them together into one scene that is the desktop using Direct3D. And so that's desktop composition. So the desktop window manager is the combination of the thing that does the compositing and the interaction of that with the actual end-user window management feature, so what happens when you actually drag the edge of a window over, all of that together, and things like Flip 3D and the look and feel that you get when you draw the windows on the screen.
Okay, so then instead of drawing each of these components separately or each of these windows separately, it renders the entire screen and then...
Yeah, it takes those pre-rendered windows and essentially makes a copy of that texture and moves that texture over onto the graphics card, and it handles occlusion and dirty regions and those sorts of things to make it be performant.
Okay, well that makes sense. Right.
So it comes with some graphics requirements as well, right? Because it's using your graphics hardware in a way that we didn't before, and that's why, for example, Windows Vista uses DirectX 9 to go do that.
Okay, well good. A little bit of a digression there. That's not actually why I came to talk to Kam today. It's just that, finding these things out about you, I can't help but ask just because I'm curious, and I'm sure you guys are curious, and so, that's good information. Now, why I am here today, of course, at least what it said on my phone for the meeting, was the user, was the Windows Vista GUI?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we've gotten a lot of questions from developers on has been, how do you go and reproduce some of the visual effects that are in Windows Vista in your applications yourself? So if you're going and building an application using Windows Presentation Foundation or using some other toolkit or just using the Win32 API directly, how do you go take your app and take advantage of some of the features in Windows Vista. And one of the biggest, most common ones we get asked about is how do I get glass into my window? So we have these glass window borders. People see the Windows Media Player with a strip of glass at the bottom. And people see IE and Windows Explorer with the glass coming down into the navigation bar. People want to know how do they do that because they might want that in their application as well. And so I've got a great demo here we can go through that shows how to do it in a Windows Presentation Foundation application.
Okay, so then essentially that functionality is not provided automatically. You have to...
Well, it is and it isn't, right? So a window on its own will get a glass border.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the windows just have a window border.
Yeah.
Occasionally a developer might want their window to do something a little different, and for various reasons you're going to want your user interface to be different. And sometimes you might want just a sheet of glass, sometimes you might want the toolbar or some specific portions of your UI to appear a little more recessed than other parts of your content, and one great way to do that is to put it on top of glass, assuming it's small enough. So an example would be like you might want the status bar of your application to be on glass because you want it to be there and you want people to be able to look at it, but you don't want it to necessarily be as prevalent as the rest of your UI.
Yeah.
So there's a good example of a situation like that.
Okay, so then...
and so these are things we wouldn't do automatically because we can't guess the developer's intention, but we do want them to be able to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense then. Just an idea. Can we first look at the app while it's running, and then
let's
I can hit you with a few questions, and we can get to the bottom of this thing.
Sounds great.
Okay. Got to grab the camera here, everybody, and carry it over to the laptop. So here we are then. At Kam's laptop, and
so
got a bit of code here.
Let's close the window, and there's my kid. And,
in a laundry basket.
In a laundry basket. He likes to ride around in a laundry basket, so... let's get the app up and running here.
Okay.
So here I've got a simple web browser written using Windows Presentation Foundation, and you can see that the glass portion of the window actually comes down into the address bar. You can see that over here. You can see it kind of behind the buttons a little bit. You can see it behind the search box. If I go over here, you can see sort of some of the color changes, or over the clock, you can totally see it. Mm-hmm. And it's also down here under the status bar of the window. So I've got a live status bar, and I can put it over some icons here. And as I mouse over the links in the page, the status bar actually, has good results. But the nice thing about this is it's a little more understated than a big gray silver bar that's going to feel heavy at the bottom of your app. It's your status bar. It's contextual kind of background information. It's not something you want to put in the user's face, which is why it's not at the top of your window. So this is an example of an app you might want to build, and this is actually a pretty functional browser. So I can click around on media and see some videos here, and the back button works, and I can type in a different URL. I can say like go somewhere else. I can search the web. I can be a little bit egotistical and type in my name and get some search results about me. So some pretty good basic kind of browser functionality.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways you've built a browser that we could have built say for XP, but then you've added as well that glass effect for that for the window there.
Exactly. And so this is an app that actually runs just fine in Windows XP. Although there's probably some, if you wanted to take this app and run it in both cases, there's probably some changes you'd want to make in a platform-specific way. Because the sample is really meant to kind of show what you can do on Vista. And I'll talk specifically when we get into the sources about kind of what you would want to do differently.
Okay. How do we do it?
So how do we do it? So let's go into the app. So the first thing I did is I'm going to open up another application. This is Expression Blend. And so this is Windows Presentation Foundation design tool for pro designers. And what I did was I essentially laid out my window using Blend, and I used the toolbox to basically drag the buttons in here, set some properties on them. So if I click on the back button, you can see the properties, and the name is back, and it's got colors and so forth all set up here in Blend. So I laid out my UI here. And there are a couple things I had to do to really make the browser work and to kind of really make it do what I wanted. So one thing, so let's switch into XAML view, is I had to actually get a web browser control in there. And anybody who's spent any time with WPF knows that there's no built-in web browser control in in WPF. So the way that we did it, there's a thing called frame, which you can use for some things, but what I decided to use instead was some of the Windows Forms interop functionality in Windows Presentation Foundation. And so what I'm actually doing is hosting the WinForms web browser control inside my Windows Presentation Foundation window, just to get the page rendering.
Okay.
So, and you can see where that's happening here, where I just have a Windows Forms host, and then inside that I have an actual web browser control, and that's the control that I chose, and I set some default properties on that. So, pretty simple to just get that into the window. So then, over here, let's go into Visual Studio for how the code's actually hooked up, and we can talk through each different piece of this. So I'm back in the XAML here, and what I've got is 2 buttons for back and forward, and I've got handlers here for on-click for back and forward, just basically going to hook them up to the control itself to navigate around. Mm-hmm. I've got a text box for the address bar, which will have a handler for when you're actually typing, so I can pick up when you hit the enter key. And then I've got another button that's the go button. I've got another text box for the search box with another key down handler for the same thing, so that we can search when you hit enter. And then search button to launch the search if you don't hit enter. And finally, dock panel, which will host my WinForms control, and then just below that I have a text box that I only use for output for the status bar, and that'll give me browser status text. So very simple window layout here, and then what I do over here is this is where all the magic happens in the code behind.
Okay.
So I've got a simple window class, and the first thing I do is I need to create a struct to represent margins. So the window manager actually has a specific API that lets you extend the frame that it draws around a window into the client area of the window, and that's what we're going to use to actually get glass inside the window. And there's a couple requirements that have to be met in order to use this API. Composition has to be running. You have to be running on Windows Vista because there's no composition on Windows XP. And so we want to check those things up front. And so the first thing we do is we actually import the DLL that holds these APIs, and so that's where I've got these 2 DLL imports to get to my to get to the specific APIs that I need. And then I go and I check and I say, hey, are these is composition running? And then I go to extend the glass frame. So then I have a helper function here that actually does the work of extending the glass frame. And so it goes and it takes care of the window interop. It sets the background brush both in Windows Presentation Foundation as well as the Win32 background brush to be transparent, and that's very important because you need a clear alpha channel behind your window, or the composition won't happen the right way because GDI doesn't do drawing with alpha in a native way. Okay. So the first thing we do is we go and we set the background color. And then I go and I get the system DPI, because if I'm running at 120 DPI, the actual number of pixels I'll get for extending the frame will be wrong, so I have to go and correct based on the system DPI. And then I take the margins that have been handed to me that I want to extend the frame in. And so you can basically say on the top, bottom, left, or right, here's how many pixels in from where you would normally be, that's how far in I want the glass to come, and then I'll draw over those parts with my buttons or my UI, whatever I'm going to do. And so that's what I'm doing in this app. The other thing you can do if you want to get a sheet of glass is you can actually just pass in a negative value into the margins and just pass in -1, and then what'll happen is we'll extend the glass frame entirely into the surface of the whole window.
By a sheet of glass, what do you mean?
So a good example of that is here, like in the Windows sidebar. If I open up the Add Gadgets window, this is literally a whole sheet of glass. Yeah. And so if I wanted to do something like that, that's an example of the sheet of glass API. Another example of using that is the UI for Alt-Tab itself, where the whole window is glass. And there are some situations where you might want to do this if you have something that's more transient, that's just going to show up for a minute. You don't want to keep a sheet of glass up too long because it has some performance implications on the system.
Okay. Huh.
You probably don't want to get into, or you probably don't want to bring on. So we call this API, and we basically say, all right, here's how far we want to extend the glass in, and then that's what the helper method does, and then what we do is we go and call that helper method when the window's loaded. So we have onSource initialized, which is essentially the very first thing the first instance we have for going and calling the extend glass frame API, we do that and we say, here's a margin that we want to go and expand it by. And then the other thing we do when the window gets loaded is we set up the Windows Forms application. So we want to enable visual styles on it, so we get the cool Vista style scroll bars, and as well we want to set up some event handlers for it. So when the text of the status bar changes, or when the text of the address bar changes for the control, we want to be able to go and reflect those in the UI of our application as well. And so here I have event handlers for when the status text changes and for when the browser actually navigates. And so that's what these two are.
Okay.
So so that's that. So then after that, it's very straightforward, just hooking up event handlers to go and do all these things, and that's something I think most people already know how to do.
Yeah, creating just like a normal web browser.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so then you run the app and you're up and running, and you can basically go browse around, and you've got glass down in your status bar, or down in your address bar, and down in the status bar.
Well, that's actually pretty cool. So then I'm wondering, why is there not like a built-in API to do this yet?
So there's a couple things. One of the things that we looked at with Windows Presentation Foundation was we really wanted to have the API of WPF to be consistent on every platform that you used it on. And because Glass and the window frames is really a very Windows Vista thing, it didn't make the most sense to go and make it part of that API, because then you would want that API to have some reasonable behavior on Windows XP, and that was a little bit hard to rationalize. So that was one thing that influenced it. And then the other thing we looked at was just in terms of all of the really core things we needed for, very frequent common scenarios, it wasn't the highest thing on the list. And, one thing we do when we make software is we prioritize, and that didn't feel like it necessarily made it above the bar. We did want to make sure it was possible, and so this was kind of the intermediate level where we came to. So the DWM API exists. You can get to it through C++. If you're writing native code, it's no problem. And if you're writing managed code, you can get to it through interop. And so that seemed like the easiest way to do that.
All right, so I'm going to stick the camera back down over here, and we'll continue our chat. Make sure that we're all going to be in frame here. It's sort of like behind the scenes, and all very exciting. All right, so okay, so that said, now something that the Windows Mobile team did, that I kind of think about in terms of this is when Windows Mobile 5 came out, it had a lot of new functionality that wasn't in the Windows Mobile 2003.
Sure.
So they just provided like the Windows Mobile 5.0 SDKs.
Right.
Has there been any thought, into putting out like a set of, SDKs that people can just kind of, add on so they can have this functionality for free, or?
You mean like add on to Windows XP, or
that just SDKs they can install so they get, like libraries that would handle this sort of functionality for them in managed code?
Well, yeah, I mean, we thought about it. In this case, I think this is a situation where sample code is enough.
Yeah.
And because and you saw it, it's not.
Yeah, it was not.
It's less than 30 lines of code. So I don't think that's a situation where we really need to go out and give out binaries for it. And that was one of the other things that wasn't addressed in this sample specifically, was going and checking what platform you're running on and saying, hey, you know what? If I'm running on XP, don't call the DWM API. Set my background brush to something other than transparent, because probably want a background behind my window, and going and doing that I think is something you have to do on XP as well.
This brings up another issue though. Is, so that's one thing. It's one place where you're gonna have to do some p-invoking to get at the functionality you want.
Sure. What
are some other things that you might have to get a little bit dirty to get at?
In the user interface itself?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like high level, or there's not a lot of sort of high visibility things like that. There are certainly a number of like shell extensions and those sorts of things that are traditionally written in native ways that we haven't kind of focused on building managed SDKs for. But for building the UI of your application and making it so that your application fits in really well with Windows Vista, this was the kind of one big thing. And the reason we left this out was, your application fits in really well even if you don't do this.
That makes sense then, yeah.
So that was why we left it out. And the APIs for this are documented in the Windows SDK. So it's not like you have to install anything special to get to it. It's in the Windows SDK. It's up on MSDN. You can go get it. You can look at the docs for it. And we're constantly revising and editing and revisiting those docs to make sure that they're better and good for folks.
Okay, well that actually makes a lot of sense out of the library issue, because I mean if that's like one of the only primary things people are going to have to work around.
From a UI perspective, I mean that's the big one. I mean there are other features in the UI that you can always add more features to a UI toolkit. You can have a more interesting data grid. You can do richer and richer things. But WPF on its own is actually pretty extensible and really quite extensible and really quite flexible in terms of the look and feel of applications.
Yeah, I saw Blend in action when I interviewed that team, and it was just
it's quite unbelievable. So that's why I'm not too concerned with sort of limits there. And the other thing that we've discovered is that when you look at kind of the average ISV, what you're going to go build, there's a set of folks who really want to build applications that fit in well with the operating system and look like they're part of the operating system. And those are people who are generally building things like control panel extensions or utilities that are designed to tie in with the operating system. But the vast majority of developers aren't doing that. The vast majority of developers are building software for their own customers, for their own purposes and their own needs. And in those situations, matching exactly what Windows Vista looks like or what Windows anything looks like,
not a priority.
maybe not the most high priority. I mean, you want it to be familiar, you want it to fit in, it shouldn't stick out, but it's also a priority to have some brand presence and to look a little different, to look a little special. And I think Windows Presentation Foundation does a great job of enabling that. So if you want to have slightly different buttons, or if you want to have really invest in a visual design for your UI widgets for checkboxes and so forth, you can go do that and have a custom look and feel for your app, and it still works really well. It works with accessibility. It does all the things it's supposed to do, and I think WPF does a great job of enabling that.
Oh, cool. All right, now another team you worked on, aside from Arrow and Internet Explorer and where you are now, you also did some work Expression Web. Is that what you said?
So I'm working on Expression Web now.
Okay,
Actually, that's my new job.
Okay, all right. I got kind of confused. There were like 5 million.
In the last couple months.
Okay, so why don't you tell me about we were chatting a little bit before about the front page story and how it fits into the Expression Web story. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, so sure, I can. And there's some good information about this actually up on the Expression Web blog, but basically we've had a product for a long time called Microsoft Front Page, and Front Page was originally developed as a straight-up HTML authoring tool, and then eventually became part of the Office suite of applications. And while folks were working on Front Page in Office, it became kind of more focused on knowledge worker scenarios, working with SharePoint, working on an intranet, and so it did a bunch of things for that set of folks. And it also had developed a pretty good following amongst kind of a broad set of customers who really just wanted very simple web authoring tools. And they wanted to be able to go click a button and make it all look like a theme, and they wanted to be able to have simple hover buttons and features like this. And that's great, and it served that audience pretty well. But one of the things that when we kind of thought about how we want to move forward with web authoring that we sort of looked at was the folks that really do more professional web design, the folks who think about building standards-based websites and who really have to focus on the quality of their code, who have to focus on CSS that's structured well, their sources are factored in a way that makes sense. Front Page wasn't necessarily meeting the needs of that audience, and we wanted to have a product that met those needs, and we also wanted to have a product that continued to be useful for knowledge workers and working on SharePoint and those sorts of things. And so a decision was made to actually build two separate products. And so one of those products is a product called SharePoint Designer, which ships in Office 2007, and that product is great for designing SharePoints and working on SharePoints.
Do I have that? Because I've got Office 2007, and I admit I haven't fully explored everything.
I'm sure it's in there.
Okay.
I haven't seen your computer, but it's in there. It's part of the package.
That's a good point. You're not tech support yet.
And Office 2007, it's like all the previous versions where there's different packages, and some have some and some have others. So maybe it's not the one that you have. But there is a product called SharePoint Designer.
Okay.
And then there's also a product called Expression Web, which is taking some roots from the Front Page code base, actually taking quite a bit from there, and providing a product that current Front Page users can certainly continue to use, and it'll still work with your Front Page website and those features will still be supported. But a real investment was made in making this product really great for folks who care about professional web design, who care about designing a site, using standards, using CSS for positioning, managing style sheets a lot more granularly and a lot more effectively, and really doing sort of the pro web designer a service and doing a great job for that customer, because that was something that we felt like was important to help kind of foster web development moving forward.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because after interviewing the Web Expression team, I went out and I immediately downloaded Web Expression. Expression Web.
Yeah.
And, sorry, and I mean, I've been using it now, like, since that initial date, and, I mean, like, to hear that there's, like, front page code in there is kind of weird, because it seems like such a totally different product, I mean, it's so very different.
Well, I mean, it is a very different product. There were some years of development that went into it, so it's not like, we changed the about box. There was a lot more that was done there. But the other thing was, we do have a commitment to our existing customers, and we wanted to make sure that customers who do use front page and have those websites are able to continue to use their site and continue to author their site, and so there were good reasons to kind of take those routes. The other thing is we had an existing design surface for HTML, and we had an existing code editor, and it's always there's a temptation to start a brand new code base from nothing.
Yeah.
But if you have pieces you can build on, you can get your value to customers earlier than later. That's always a good thing. And that was a choice that we made, was to use front page as a starting point.
Cool. So you've kind of been all over Microsoft. I mean, you've been in a lot of different places. Like, just out of curiosity, and where do you see yourself going next? Do you have any, I know it could be 2 years down the road. Do you have any place that, really interests you?
Well, gosh, I don't know. I mean, I just joined this team, 2 months ago, so I'm pretty excited about web development right now. I think that working with, one of the things that I've sort of developed a good deal of passion around over the years that I've been here has been working with pro designers building software. Mm-hmm. And the work I did on Arrow, the work I did on MS Explorer before that, we had some really, really talented folks on the design team. And part of what I got to do in working with them was I got to see firsthand a lot of the workflow that they experienced working with developers to create software. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I have a good deal of passion about personally is improving developer designer workflow for creating software and for creating really nicely designed software experiences. And so that was why the Expression team was really attractive to me. And I think that that's something that I have a good deal of passion around, and I'm excited to kind of keep working on for a good long time. So
Expression is about the tightest integration I've ever seen between designers and developers. I've been pretty floored, just overall.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's resonating.
Okay, well, very good. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything else you want to say, or?
No, I think we're all good. Go out and buy Windows Vista. There you go.
All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you for the interview, Kam.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool.